We are live. Yes. Now that's how it should work. All right. So the the link should be out there. We should be going live. We should be um yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Yay. Thank you very much, guys. Like, come on, come on, come on. It's gotta be there. Yeah. All right. Let's we had a little it's live. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me. Let's do this all over again. Well, not exactly all over again. We're this is Discord Tuesday. We're talking about cultures and customs. Let's jump into it. All right. So um this week we're talking about cultures and customs. Today is Discord Tuesday, which is a grab bag, kind of with the mechanics and whatnot. And basically, each hour this week, each day this week, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to talk about adding, using best practices when it comes to using and adding in cultures, basically getting a little bit more immersive, making your world a little bit more alive, and just all around tabletop RPG good stuff. So, as a reminder, yesterday we talked about food, we talked about clothing, language, even behaviors of to a limited extent, and I think for today, we let's talk about some of the mechanical aspects. Now, I understand that for the most part, you're not going to see a lot of mechanics attached to this, but like for example, yesterday we ended with a little bit of a discussion on, say, let's say a culture has a hunting tradition. And that hunting tradition, the PCs may get involved in that hunting tradition. And this is a great way to to ramp up the amount, the sheer number of encounters you have without every encounter devolving into a combat encounter. Much like the idea of using random encounters, we should understand that just simply by the definition of encounter does not necessarily mean there's combat going on, but that there is an exchange of social or exploration involved in that, using the other two pillars in tabletop role-playing games rather than it all being combat. Now, for those who don't know, some games have the designers of those games, for example, Dungeons and Dragons, have designed a number of expected encounters between the downtime of the player characters, between short rests and long rests. And if I'm not mistaken, Dungeons and Dragons has basically arranged that into 6 to 8 encounters per gaming day, between each long rest. So a short rest happens between three to four, would happen, subdivide those 6 to 8 encounters in half with a short rest. So unfortunately, what ends up happening is that there one of two things happens. Either a DM has 6 to 8 combat encounters, and oh yeah, yeah, behind me, yeah, it's the gaming room. It's the entertainment room. Yeah, sure is. Let's see. Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, a bunch of DVDs. That's Wonder Woman. That's a material we use to block out the sunlight to come in because it'll wash out the television. And then there's Doctor Strange and the Avengers. Better with this finger. Avengers. That's a hand-drawn picture of, not by me, of War Machine, and then that's the X-Men, and that's Star Wars. That's DC. There's a Darth Vader there. There's a big movie ticket. Yep. Yeah. Oh, you can't see it. Oh, right here is a signed picture for Stan Lee. It's framed and such like that. You can't really see it. It's sitting on a speaker. All right. Squirrel. So the the idea of having multiple encounters before a short rest and long rest, or whatever game you're using, which allows your players to rest, it almost seems like war, because if you had 3 or 4 combat encounters, short rest, 3 or 4 more combat encounters, long rest, um, essentially the player characters are clocking in and doing 8 hours of combat per day, and that's not adventuring. That's uh what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. Good, Zeb. Say it again. Um, but the whole point is you need to change up the encounters. Excuse me. You need to change up your say it, yeah. Between and mix and match them up between your social encounters and your exploration. Um, yeah, got to be real careful about that. YouTube's real finicky on copyright. Now, when it comes to cultures and traditions, this is an easy way to add in some of those encounters because, uh, yeah, Pelor says I tend to have like 1 combat per few days of in-game time. My last session was the most combat heavy I've done and had whole 2 combats in one day. And see, that's the thing, because you either have a GM who basically puts their PCs at war, and you have combat after combat without much of a rest, or you have your games are adjusted so that you are more readily immersive for your gaming, uh, the gaming nature, the gaming reality of your setting, which might only be 1 combat every few days, right? Because their PCs are doing other things. But unfortunately, what happens is, as a game designer, like for example, in WotC for Dungeons and Dragons, the PCs seem like they are far more incredibly powerful because every encounter they get into, they are fully capable to deal with that one encounter because they haven't been depleted from the last 6 or 7 encounters that the game designers thought or as intended for the game to establish. So, I mean, I know I'm getting into mechanics, and we are going to get to cultures and traditions, but just follow me on this one. So, for me, one technique in order to, and this is hard to say because I know players are going to balk at me saying it, but one idea for me to help deplete resources of the PCs, to give them chances to make hard decisions, is to very much use the environment. And another way to use that is with culture. And for example, the PCs might encounter a group of people who will not deal with the PCs unless they engage in a hunting party, right? And so part of the culture might be going on a hunt. And that hunt might involve a number of things. It might involve you riding a mount, or giving chase to something in the woods, or sneaking around to find something and sniping it, setting up traps, or using maps, or and there may be other things in addition to the hunt, other cultural things, whether it's sounds or music, or marking of the body, or only hunting in a specific manner, maybe without armor and only with a handmade spear or a net or something of that nature. So once you start stacking these things together, you have yourself a bit of a you start having some skill checks in there. Maybe the PCs are obligated because of the nature of the culture to perform the act in a limited manner. For example, lots of cultures don't want you wearing your heavy plate mail while you're in the midst of eating a meal, or going on a hunt, or climbing a tree, or going into a sweat lodge, or having a meditative, going into a meditative trance, or essentially just having a party in the streets, So, so Mr. Spencer says, number one, is convince them to allow you into the hunt, which is diplomacy or charisma. And even in that, you might have multiple levels of that. So, instead of just one, you might have like a charisma challenge in essence, to see just how much you've been able to convince them. Maybe, you could have like the first rolls just for them to even listen to you in the first place. And then maybe the second one is something different. He goes on to say that the second one is craft a spear with the locals, and that could involve maybe the PCs are allowed to help each other. So maybe one of the PCs is not very good at it, and you could mix and match a number of skills, right? Is it history check? Is it nature or survival to carve yourself a spear? Maybe it's a dexterity check to get the right balance or something. Maybe it's a sleight of hand check as well. It's any number of things. Also, it goes on to say number 3, track the creature through the woods with the wisdom survival skill check. Exactly. And sure, could this devolve down into make a roll, make another roll, make another roll? Yes, it could be very boring. It could be just as boring as combat. I hit it with my sword. Okay, roll. I hit it with my sword. Okay, roll. Or you can make this very dramatic, Mr. Spencer continues on to say, number 4, decide to face it head on or chase it into a corner or a trap, which might be like strength, athletics, or intelligence. Yet, maybe chasing it into a dead end crevice or chasing it to the shoreline of a raging river, or chase it into a net or into the waiting arms of maybe a larger group of hunters, and your job is to chase it out of the woods or whatever the case may be. Maybe your job is to chase it down and exhaust whatever it is, the animal or creature or something. Or maybe it's not to kill it at all. Maybe it's to capture it, like a Pegasus or something, right? Of course, Mr. Spencer says number 5, combat. And that's exactly right. Maybe we're talking, this sounds like we're talking more like a tribalist kind of thing, but this fits for a modern day society as well. Imagine yourself in a business meeting, and in your business meeting, the CEO will only talk to you during his handball or racquetball, thing that he does an hour a day or something like that, right? At the local country club. Okay. So you're trying to have a charisma challenge with the CEO while his assistant's standing there and the CEO's playing racquetball in the room inside the country club, while at the same time you're trying to also score points playing racquetball, and you're trying to figure, maybe using some insight, like, if you're that good, maybe if you win against the CEO, will that impress them, or will this person just get pissed off because he's like a narcissist or something, right? So, yes, you could apply any number of encounters and mix and match the combat and the social interactions and even the environment into those things. Now, Pelora says that. Plura says for her players, they tend to use less resources though, so resting doesn't really matter. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, yes. Sometimes the capabilities of the players, based on the expected number of encounters, can make it seem as if, and I know I've seen this in a number of Dungeons and Dragons encounters, that it makes it seem like the player characters are far more capable than the game designers expected them to be in every encounter. So the wizard with the fireball, who doesn't go through 3 or 4 resource draining encounters before having a short rest, or 6 to 8 encounters before a long rest, always has that fireball available. Whereas if you're expecting 3 to 4 encounters before you even get a chance to replenish your spells, that PC might be more likely to maybe hoard their resources or be challenged on using their resources. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, Pelor says it's one of the issues I had with Numenera, to be honest. Being able to re-roll being able to re-roll pretty cheaply. PCs could burn all their resources in social and skill challenges, and so making them easy and re-roll those unlucky ones. Yeah, and of course, depending on the game, some games default to cinematic heroism. So failure can be a rare event based on the type of game. Numenera does that. Some games, I'm trying to think of some others. Well, Dungeons and Dragons kind of falls on the cinematic side, as well as a number of things. Mr. Spencer says, note, if winning the encounter means they get into the city and are accepted into the tribe's inner circle, it can be into the tribe's inner circle can be the stakes that are at play. Yes, I definitely agree, because if the goal, give culture and customs allow us to turn the dial on, click the dial over to the win conditions. So a win condition, for example, tracking down a Pegasus and capturing it and bringing it back, that win condition doesn't necessarily means that you lose if you kill it, right? So an alternate method of achieving a win, capturing an animal, singing a song, impressing a noble or a rich merchant or a CEO, or proving your worth to a shadowy faction or something by stealing something very valuable in the first place. I mean, there's any number of things by having an alternate win condition. Let me go back to my idea about using triangles, right? Sure, you could easily kill the evil, oppressive king, but this faction wants you to sneak into the king's bedchamber and steal his prized scepter that he's always swinging around and decreeing or something like that, and you need to steal the scepter without killing the king to get the scepter back to the evil, shadowy faction, which will then give you a clue as to which evil force is actually granting the king their vast, dominating power or something of that nature, right? So the thing is that, yes, a simple matter would be sneak in, kill the king, and you're done. But that would not allow them to win in the situation. It would now allow them to move forward in the story. And so, yeah, using cultures and traditions are excellent ways of doing that. Before I get back into the chat, one example of a culture or tradition that is very useful in severely limiting PCs going 0 to 60 on everyone, in the game White Wolf, the original White Wolf Vampire the Masquerade had a tradition of having a location known as Elysium. And in one of my games, it took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it was the art museum, the very art museum where Rocky ran up the steps. That art museum had hypnotized and mind-controlled guards at night, and they would use the art museum as a place for all the vampires to meet. And Elysium was literally neutral ground. There was no combat possible. And so maybe there's a tradition of having these enemy factions meet in a neutral ground, a neutral area, to hash out their problems without violence. And if the PCs go 0 to 60 and just start pulling weapons and want to kill everyone, then what happens is everyone else, the rule may be everyone else gets to pile on the rabbit. Hey, if you're the first one to cause violence, the rest of us get to kill you. Yeah. Yep, Mr. Spencer says, we cannot fight here, Highlander. It's holy ground. Exactly. And so, in a way, is it a chintzy one? Sure, it has been used many times, yes. But does it work? Probably. Tesla Ranger brings up the Continental in the John Wick series. Yep, no, a world filled with assassins, but there's a rule. There's no violence on the Continental property. And if you engage in violence like John Wick did, it's a blood hunt, right? Everybody gets to go after you. You are excommunicado. So yeah, definitely a thing. Yeah, Plura says, "Nah, I didn't change it up. I just didn't expect a particular aspect to give me such a headache." Yeah, when it comes to PCs winning a lot, yeah, I get it. Um, yep. And Zev says, to quote Barbosa on Raw, the code is more of a system of guidelines and hard and fast rules. I absolutely agree with you on that one. You can. It's our game. It's our toolbox. We get to pull out the tools that we want to use in the first place. Zev also says an interesting thing to do is have a culture of people clash with how the players work. In Dragon Age, there's a religion philosophy known as the kin or kun, where women aren't allowed to be soldiers. If a woman decides to fight in their culture, that woman is saying she chooses to be viewed as a man. So an NPC may see a female NPC and call her a capable man, not out of disrespect. He only knows that women are priestesses and bakers in his society. So why should he treat them different? And that's a very cool and interesting manner of having a culture where, like for like what you're saying there, Zev, that a PC might be female traveling, female warrior traveling with these other guys, and call the woman a man, and then go through the process of like, why do you call me that? And like, what's that about? And and of course you have the out of the game, your PC's like, you do realize my character is female, and you hear the DM like, or GM, and you're like, yeah, no, I know. But I'm specifically pointing out this person's calling you a man, and then you realize, oh, in their culture, this is how they see things, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And one of the great things about using like some kind of custom or culture or whatever is, as the game master, you may not have thought it out completely, but you want to include something quite different. But at the same time, it opens up questions. It's especially great if you want to drop a lot of story hooks. You want to draw your players in, have them lean forward on the table. Like, what happened? What did this person say? How are they dressed? How are they acting? Why did they react this way when I wore my red scarf into the tavern or something? Why are they mad that I'm eating with my fingers? Isn't everybody else doing the same thing? Did this are you saying this person got mad because I decided to eat first and didn't wait for the elder to take the first bite or something, or whatever the case might be, right? So these are the things that really, really, really added to the game. Now, let's see. Mr. Spencer is tracking a Pegasus equals casting fly on the barbarian and watching him grapple it. They're rolling to pin it as he and the beast plummet from the sky. Yeah. All right, both of you are prone. Of course, you're both falling, but sure, why not? Yeah. Yeah, as I was talking about the Continental, like, yeah, by the fourth movie, that rule got thrown out the window. Yeah, it's world building. And of course, it's John Wick, right? Oh man, yeah, man, what? If only. It's a shame Highlander wasn't a one and done, because they kind of they kind of ruined it. Not ruined it, but like took it past its scope. Yeah, kind of all the follow-ups were just like, oh, they're such booty movies. Ugh. Mrs. Pinzar says social traditions. Insulting close friends is seen as strengthening them against the insults of their enemies. Good friends say some vicious stuff to each other. Hell, if you grew up in South Philadelphia, Irish and Italian neighborhoods, that's that's a pastime. Oh my goodness. Oh, the insults thrown at each other at tight families and stuff is a thing. Oh man, it's great. Yeah, they call each other a-holes all the time. F you, a-hole, blah blah blah. But don't you say anything against them. Oh man, they will kick your ass. Yeah. Oh man, they will. So that's now that's another thing that you're kind of bringing up in terms of like insults and jokes and codes of silence and how people greet each other, how they conduct business, how they have conversations and such. We talked about that for language. Now, one thing you can also do if you want to kind of gamify some of these things is to this. I'm being a little facetious here, but the player characters may gain some kind of brownie points. For example, if you're going with traditional Dungeons and Dragons in 5th edition, they have the Dungeon Master's Guide, and they have renown and honor. Renown and honor. And so, using either or both of those, you may increase or decrease your amount of renown or honor. And now, mind you, you can name it whatever you want, and you can use any kind of mechanic you want. But this might be an incentive for the PCs to get what they want. So it may not be a matter of spending gold pieces. It may be a matter of achieving some kind of higher notoriety within the culture, or adapting yourself to live within that culture, much like the concept of in the book and early mid-70s movie Shogun. The book was about English sailors that go to Japan, and they land upon the shores of Japan, and it involves them being pulled into the machinations of the local shogun, and in this Japanese culture, and the cultural clash between, at the time, the English and the Japanese, and how they look at each other. They didn't understand what the samurai class was. They didn't understand the power, the presumed divinity that some of these the daimyo had over the people, and their acceptance of such things. So yeah, absolutely. Zev says a thing in some cultures is to conduct business after a drink to show respect to the house owner, that they lower their defenses and trust they wouldn't poison them, and to show they come in peace. Absolutely. Stripping bare their arms and armor, being fully kitted out might have a penalty to the roll. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Was it Dutch sailors? Deadman says Shogun was about Dutch sailors. Yes. Yeah. The television show, I think, deserves a remake. I think it deserves to be updated. But the book is, oh my goodness, the book is excellent. If you love the idea of Japanese culture and such, I am going to talk about culture here. This has to do with in the book Shogun, and talk about conducting business. Okay, so in the book, the main character, let's see, Tesla Ranger says the miniseries is loosely based on the adventures of English navigator William Adams, who journeyed to Japan in 1600 and rose to high rank in the service of the shogun. Zeb says the book was it was I hear you, Zeb. I loved it, but it's also time, and maybe I'm rewriting history in my own head, but whatever the case might be. I hear you, P. In the story, in the story, I guess he was Dutch at the time, because it's based on real things, but of course they're none of the real names. That the character goes into the home of one of the samurai that they met, and of course this outsider smells terrible. He's got bad manners. They don't like him. Okay, and one of the samurai is pretty violent to his wife, disrespects her. He's one of the greatest warriors, but he's not a very nice man to his wife. And that his wife is looking at the stranger, at this invader, with like the googly eyes, like they're looking at each other like, wow. Okay, well, the native samurai understands that he wants to kill this stranger so bad. It's like his knuckles are white. He absolutely wants to kill this guy, but he can't do it because he's invited him into his home for a meal, for a drink. And in the course of what happens, what he does is he tries to intimidate him because he's one of the best Zen archers on the island. Okay. So while he's in the house, he takes out his bow and arrow. And of course, the entire time they're thinking he's going to shoot this arrow right into this Dutchman's chest. Instead, without looking, he points to the side, fires the arrow through the rice paper walls. And he says the stranger, the challenge was that he was going to fire the arrow into one of the braces that holds up the house, and it's outside, unseen. And so the stranger says, did you hit that post? And of course, the samurai is like, of course I did. And so the stranger's like, well, I will invite you out so we can take a look. And he's like, I don't have a need to look. I know that I'm successful. So when he goes out there, he sees that, yes, this arrow pierced a couple of rice paper walls, piercing all of them, and implanted itself into the wood frame of the house. So thinking that this would intimidate the stranger instead says, like, you know what? We're going to leave this arrow here as a sign of your greatness and all this kind of stuff. And the samurai ends up realizing that this stranger is learning their ways, and now he feels embarrassed. And so it was this whole thing where isn't combat, but the stranger immersing himself into the culture, the samurai wanting this guy to break their cultural norms so he could just kill him right then and there, wouldn't do it. And therefore he ends up gaining the grudging respect of the samurai. And I know I went down a little bit of a little twisting path there, but in terms of turning that into like a gamifiable method, is possible. Either you can do you could do this on a 1 to 10 scale. You can give like kind of like Benny points instead of inspiration, or Bennies or Moxie or hero points, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you can give rerolls or points that they can spend to allow the player characters to navigate through the social structures of the city or culture or continent or whatever the case may be. So let's see. All right. So Mr. Spencer says combat customs such as honor duels. Yep. Sparring the strongest as they are mighty, sparring the weak that they might be motivated to improve themselves, executing your enemies so as to assert your dominance, and running of the bulls. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cultures don't mean that everybody's sitting around being polite to each other. There are a ton of for players who love combat, there's a ton of combat related cultures you can get into. The running of the bulls is perfect. I love the idea of that. And when you take that and stretch it out, there's there's all kinds of like rock climbing. There's of course I talked about sporting events where you have challenges like arm wrestling, regular wrestling. As kids, we used to play Superman, where you punch each other in the chest for no good reason. There's all kinds of dumb things people do. There are challenges of pain, striking each other to see who goes down first. There are tests of strength, lifting, pulling, bending, things. Hell, a simple tug of war, those kind of things are always a drinking contest. Yeah, there's tons of physical things that people can get into. Very beginnings of the Olympics, the Olympiads, where there are people testing themselves with discus and javelin throwing and long distance running and navigating obstacle courses of all types, and you can absolutely turn the volume up on any of those things instead of a regular obstacle course of, say, climbing a wall, climbing up a net rope, climbing up scaling a rope with your hands and feet. Maybe they're like monkey bars. Maybe there's like logs you climb over and duck down under. You could absolutely make that super nasty or lethal or strange or bizarre, much like MXC, most extreme. What's the G4 television series that was dubbed over? But yeah, American Ninja is or the and the permutations thereof. The Ninja series, live action today is another one. Mr. Spenzar says social traditions. Yeah, most extreme elimination challenge. That's it. Oh, it's such a dumb show. I loved it. Social traditions. How bowing to your elders. Nordic countries have what's referred to as 3 hospitalities. The hospitality of the hearth, inviting people into your home, the hospitality of sharing your food, and the hospitality of your drink, sharing mead and whatever alcohol you happen to have. Exploratory customs. A glossary of symbols are used to communicate nearby threats, places of relative safety to camp, resources or boons and such. Always inviting strangers to camp with you. I believe that is that's a Bedouin culture as well. I believe that's a maritime culture in terms of ships going down, that you take your ship and try to save people. Yeah, absolutely. Going back into the chat, Zev says an interesting thing to do is to make your players stop listening to an NPC because their culture turns what they thought was a sensible option into worst case scenario. Yeah. Example: your dwarves or orcs could be basically Klingons willing to charge in the suicidal odds for the honor of dying in battle. Yeah. You could definitely turn your PCs like, wait, this doesn't sound like a good idea, guys. And they're like, we're going in, yeah. You know what I mean? Thank you. Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review says, give Musashi a listening to a 60-hour audiobook. Not sure how long the book is, at least 800 pages. Ooh, Musashi. Plura says a common mechanical cultural thing is drinking contests, particularly when it comes to your dwarfy orky folks. Yep. Did that sheet on the couch just? I don't know. It could be one of my cats back there. Nope, if she was, she's probably gone. Let's see. Tesla Ranger says it's over 900 pages abridged. Plura says dying in battle always seems like it should be easy to achieve. Not if you're a tough old bastard dwarf or orc, man. They always come back. Oh man. So anyway, all right. So 984 pages for the Musashi novel. Steve Perry, the writer, not the singer, has something known as the Musashi Flex in his Matador series. They're not as long. Those books aren't as long, but they're really fun to read. Other ways to add in, to mix in some physical and social and exploration things into your cultures is to, instead of offering magic items, you can offer ephemeral or physical rewards for doing the thing that they are doing. The simple act of getting a boon of some sort from someone in power. For example, the easy example is someone achieving some great honor in battle and in combat and being recognized for their bravery or their heroism. Okay. And then they receive a medal. Here in the United States, it would be like a Purple Heart or a Bronze Star or something of that nature. But in that world, it could be a brand or a tattoo. It could be simply having a dinner in their honor or some kind of celebration. It could be they're given a certain type of jewelry that they're allowed to wear, and which might actually be disrespectful if they loot some random bodies on the road and wearing certain types of jewelry or things of that nature. Oh, so it's like a Purple Heart is a good medal, though. It just means you got shot. Well, yes, to an extent, and you may have differentiation between the kinds of honors that are given, like getting the warrior that got hurt in battle. Everyone's just like they're like holding up their glasses and drinking, like, come on, man, this is your first time, come on, and they're drinking and hugging and everything. Whereas maybe a very act of bravery might be done far more official in a with a written decree, or people writing poetry or something. Also, there is the idea of, like, you got, like, Mr. Spencer brought up the three hospitalities and Nordic traditions. There's also maybe there might be combat hospitalities, right? The meeting together and drinking and or talking or exchange of gifts with enemies, or the writing of a story or a sonnet or a poem in honor of this battle with an individual. Yeah, I'll use that. Yeah, Dead Man says not even. It means you were injured while deployed. A stub toe while deployed equals Purple Heart. Oh, you guys are nasty. You guys are wrong. Although you can't be wrong if you got to be right, right? So yes, absolutely. And now, depending on the culture, it doesn't necessarily mean it's always taken super seriously. So there is the idea of, like, for example, I remember watching a documentary about combat pilots taking off and landing on their first time taking off and landing on aircraft carriers, and the veteran pilots would give a nickname to the newbie pilots. Now, mind you, they're all experts, but this is the first time they're performing their functions on an aircraft carrier. And so the more veteran aircraft carrier pilots will give those pilots a nickname if something happens that they did wrong or was silly or strange or was a mistake, but they survived it, right? And so therefore there is this kind of embracing of morbid humor, which is done in many walks of life. Especially the more morbid the profession, the more humor you'll probably find. And so maybe internally there's a cultural thing where you're given like a silly nickname, but really it's a form of respect and honor. That, yeah, gallows humor is fun. Yeah, absolutely, Zeb. And that kind of that dark gallows humor, like, internally they may make fun of you, but externally, it's like you're one of us. And if one person says something to you, all of us are going to beat ass, right? And you could be inducted in. It's like the mage gets inducted into the barbarian tribe, right? And all these, like, big burly tribes people are embracing the wizard, and calling them, I don't know, calling them stick reed or something like that, calling them a wimp or whatever kind of silly, butterfly or something, right? They give him this funny name, but then when the wizard gets pushed around, when he goes into town, all of a sudden he's like surrounded by like these big burly barbarians that are like, what did you say to him? Did you best take that back, because we will beat your ass. And maybe that might even be a really cool twist in a story where the PC is like, man, these guys they just don't respect me at all. And then come to find out that actually that's part of their culture, that, yeah, they pick with you, but like you're one of them. You know what I mean? So another gamifiable thing is that much like, you don't necessarily have to go this deep into it, but you guys mentioned this before, that how someone addresses someone, or clothing, or performing certain uh, social acts may give you a benefit or a penalty on a role, right? You might have, for example, um, you need to speak to someone important at a funeral, and the wearing of white might be very important. And if you wear white to the funeral, of course, you're unarmed, you don't have your armor on, you've cleaned yourself, you're well groomed, and you come in very respectfully, wearing your white robes and your white headband and your white gloves to speak to someone important. You might get advantage on that role. Now, is it possible that someone can come to the funeral without wearing white? Sure. And are you a guard? Was it an important message, and you've traveled 15 days to get there, and you're bloodied and dirty and stuff, and you absolutely positively need to send this message? Yeah, sure. They'll forgive you for doing that because it's important. But is the wearing of white, does that give you a benefit in this situation? Maybe you might want to add that in there. Maybe a certain gender or religion or status in the community. For example, the paladin going to the Assassin's Guild to ask them a favor might not work out for them, despite the paladin's high charisma, right? But the rogue who's the rogue who specialized in backstabbing people and missing a couple of teeth and kind of smells a little bit because he doesn't like to wash, maybe that Assassin's Guild might listen to the rogue because they know that they're one and the same. You know what I mean? So you can do that kind of thing. It's like, quote, "Listen, this is my nerd. Only I'm allowed to call him such. Anyone makes fun of him, I'm turning your head into a paperweight. Got it?" Yeah, exactly. Right. It's the we get the chance to pick with them, but not you. You know what I mean? Mr. Spensar says, do you disrespect Butterfly? He flutters around the battlefield with such grace. Yeah, exactly. And who knows? I mean, that's a great gift of sorts, right? Like the gift of, instead of a magic item, instead of gaining levels or something, or a potion or a scroll, maybe it's the whenever you need help, just call, right? Or the paladin does perform some act for the Assassin's Guild, right? And the paladin's kind of like, oh, man, I'm breaking my oaths, but I got to make this deal to keep the Thieves Guild and the Assassin's Guild at bay. And they go, you know what, you did a solid for us. So guess what? Maybe they give them a ring that's got a black stone on it or something, and they're like, you you see the kid in the street, you need our help. All you got to do is just give it to them. They know what to do, and we'll be there for you. Yeah. Now, remember, you only get to call on us once, but just in this one chance, this one thing, go ahead. And so maybe the paladin is like surrounded by his enemies in town or something, and he's like, damn it. And he takes the ring off his finger and throws it to some street urchin or something. The street urchin grabs it, and it's like, it goes running for it. And all of a sudden you see like these ninja type people come out of the corners and everything, slicing throats and stuff to protect the paladin or whatnot. And maybe they just disappear into the shadows. And the head of the Assassin's Guild like gives him like the little head nod, like, all right, dude, we're cool now. We even? All right, I'll see you later. Yeah, that very much can be a thing. Now you could turn the volume up on that as well. For example, maybe in your world, the gods have a huge impact on the world, and you saved your character may not have, maybe one or more of the PCs are not worshippers of a divine entity, but maybe one of the avatars of the god is like, you saved the parishioners, the devotees of the god of the woodlands or something. We will remember this. All you need to do is take this twig and break it, and we will be there for you, or whatever the case might be. And maybe there's some other kind of boon that happens. It could be something magical. Maybe the PCs are transported out of danger, or an illusion springs up, hiding them from enemies sneaking through the woods just this once, or the Fey creatures, which would normally harass the PCs this entire time, after having a big old party with the Fey creatures, they're like, you know what, you guys party pretty hard. I understand that, one of you turned into a frog and another one of you split down the middle by accident and we had to stitch you back together, and yet another one of you was crapping out soft serve ice cream. But whatever the case might be, you guys are cool, so we're going to leave you alone in the woodlands, right? They could achieve some kind of effect that way. And again, you might even give like Numenera has ciphers, one and done items that only do one thing once, and you can give them away like candy, right? It's the you honored us. The natives are like, you give us great honor, so they rub an ointment on the bodies of the players so that the insects in the swamp don't attack the PCs. Or here are incense, alight them when you have your camp, and it will hold off the wolves or something. Or there are evil spirits in these woods, and they will come after you, the ghosts and the banshees or whatnot. Hold this rod above your head, and so that they can see it all and know that they will tremble in fear, and that kind of thing. And sure, is something you can use outside of this particular region? Probably not. Can it be used again? No, but they may earn these things later on, much like earning. Maybe you want to run a game where the PCs get to do some mounted combat. I like to bring up some mounted combat, right? And they get to fly on Pegasuses and Griffins and stuff. And on one hand, you're like, I don't want to give it to them permanently, but I do want to run a game that way. So maybe it's just given to them by the mountain folk and used in this particular adventure temporarily, so they can travel a far distance and fly throughout the mountain and valley passes. But at the end of it, those animals are wild, and it was only for this one purpose that they were able to do it. Mr. Spencer says service to one city is rewarded with a token that denotes that service. When traveling to other cities in the region, the token can be presented to establish trustworthiness and value. Locals will offer discounts for it or other hospitalities. Hell yeah. The proverbial key to the city, right? They're given a medallion. They are given a necklace, a ring, a tattoo, a marking. It could be, hell, it may even be something strange and arcane that's marked upon them. Maybe they present their palm of their hand, and when the old witch breathes upon their hand and blows on it, something rises from their hand, and you can see that they've been marked or what have you. I mean, and again, like a key to the city, maybe the PCs start earning these things, and when they go up the coast of the city, when they go to the front gates and they look at, the guard looks them up and down, is like, I'm not letting them in. Oh, whoa, you've got the Queen's pass. Oh, please come on in. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by that, sir. Hey, listen, I apologize for being rude to you. Drinks are on me. Go to the Laughing Dragon and tell them that Jacquard sent you or something, right? That might even, and of course that can even bring other story ideas. Maybe the PCs that look untrustworthy now are carrying around a trustworthiness badge. So now people come up to them, like the A-Team. Oh, they've taken my brother, please help me. Whereas normally they're like, dirty adventurers. Nobody trusts them, Zev says there are things that are cultural things that people don't even realize. Saying bless you when you sneeze. Yep, absolutely. Touching forearms for a handshake, originally used to test if the other was armed. Absolutely. The bless you, the pulling out of a chair, the opening of a door for someone. It's the just shaking hands versus bowing is a type of greeting and such. And how is it done? Who gets to do it first and all those kind of things. So anyway, guys, we are coming to the end. I want to thank you very much. Babe, have a great day. Hey, love you. Bye. Ooh. So, guys, thank you very much. The Heraldrix has called it into the stream. Thank you for putting up with my messy background here as well. I took down my screens after having my internet checked out, and so hopefully this stream was nice and stable. I have a feeling that I'm going to have to upgrade my computer now. So, whatever. So, guys, thank you very much. Your time is very important. It's very valuable. Thank you for spending it with me. I hope you guys are able to leave here with a little bit of change. See ya. Yep. Bye. Dong dong, the toll has run.